Joy Adler, we're here again, and I'll tell you something. It was above freezing today here in upstate New York. It's been almost a month.
Mark the calendars, ladies and gentlemen.
But I'll tell you what, even if it wasn't, this episode coming up, it was going to warm you up and delight your heart and just brighten your day. The information we have with Elizabeth is fabulous. And as a bonus, she has an experiential for you at the end of this. So you're going to listen, and then you're going to want to stop the car, do your thing, make sure you get comfy and get into this experiential and actually experience what she talks about and the wisdom she just rolls out in this episode.
Rolls out. Listen, she's an expert, known her for decades. She is a phenomenon. Elizabeth Dare Andes is a somatic therapist expert, healer, educator, and a dancer divine. She understands the body, and she helps people have a greater range of motion and a greater range of emotion for optimal health. Sometimes in these little micro movements, she's such an expert. She has so many tools in the etheric tool belt, and we can't wait to introduce you to her on Energy Diagnostics Podcast. Welcome back to Energy Diagnostics Podcast. Dan, are we so fortunate today?
It's amazing. Even in the middle of winter, we find bright lights to join us and lighten our day and warm us up.
Elizabeth Dare Andes is the sun. She's returning the sun to us and really offering immense opportunity for full cellular optimal health. Elizabeth, you are a wonder. I've known you, I just figured out today, 32 years. What an honor. You have been such an inspiration, and you have been in this field your entire life, you know, as a movement, education, somatic therapist, and an energy healer, right? For over 40 years. Thank you very much. And you specialize in helping people change by building, I love this, body architecture that supports healing and energetic integration. Say that 3 times fast, Dan. It's not going to happen.
I'm still taking it in. That sounds like something I need.
But it gets better. Wait. So, Elizabeth, you have been a presenter. Yeah, you know, fascia, energy healing, somatic movement, and just how I met you. Really bringing in those micro movements and having these amazing releases. Can't wait till you get to the experiential. We're going to delight our listeners with. But you do this because you're so about reminding people that movement, right, is for physical and emotional and spiritual well-being. You specialize in restoring the emergent capacities of fascia to function as a coherent wave, restoring movement, stability, and the sense of safety needed for personal and collective trauma healing and growth. Now, before moving to upstate New York, you actually were in the city. That's where you were when I met you. You had your own studio there that you shared, right? And not for nothing, folks. As you can imagine, our Elizabeth is a former dancer and choreographer. And she, of course, built, created, held space as the head of the creative arts department at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. You know, Barbara loved what you brought. She knew that people were healing and their light was emerging and needed a space. And you created a curriculum that's still in place today at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. In fact, we're about to have Creative Arts Week. And I think it's just perfect that we welcome you, Elizabeth, to Energy Diagnostics Podcast.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We want to talk about the twinkling in the cells. Now, we think about armoring. We think about how we start to hold the breath when we have a challenging experience, when our defenses get triggered. How, what happens to bring us there, Elizabeth? What you work with people where they stop moving and flowing through life naturally?
It's a great question, one that I could probably talk about for hours. So I'm going to condense for you. But first, we have to understand that when we talk about fascia, we are talking about a different animal altogether. It is classified as the fourth state of matter. So it's neither solid, liquid, nor gas. It has the capacity to shape shift from a gelatinous kind of more robust texture to a more fluid and flowing texture. And the rate that we can shift back and forth is how we shape ourselves in terms of our life experience, not moment by moment, but like nanosecond by nanosecond. Fascia can shift and move so fast that it's truly remarkable. And what happens to us is that we tend to hold memories about how we shape-shifted in order to keep ourselves safe. And so what happens is that the body just automatically can go into those experiences, and we don't have this ability to adapt to the current circumstances in our environment that are calling for us to maybe respond differently, to maybe see that the old response is based on a limited set of understanding of facts that are arising because we're not really present in the moment. And when we become present in the moment, we are also becoming more fluid, less sticky, if you will. And it's not only emotional stuff that gets stuck in the body. It's repetitive linear movement. It's accidents, surgeries, illness, electromagnetic fields interfering with our body. This is a bioelectric, piezoelectric organism that has the ability to be, in most cases, a semiconductor, which means it can shift, it can carry a big charge, it can shift really fast. But when your fascia is really healthy, and granted, this could be an ideal because we all live on a spectrum, it acts like a superconductor. And when it acts like a superconductor, it carries a coherent wave. And that is akin to this fluid sensibility that is affects us across all spectrums of our life experience. Physical, emotional, mental, and the fascia, I believe, holds the beliefs. I guess I believe that in my bones.
Amazing. So we're talking about the scaffolding, right? The skeletal system, how it's all linked. I want to just say that you seem to get so excited when you named the wave and people, I guess, getting unstuck, less offended and movement freely flowing through. Are you saying that that's how we were built? That's how we originated? You had a really unique way of saying how that kind of got interrupted. It was almost like a solution momentarily.
Well, yes. And that's okay. We do what we need to do to survive. And these patterns get ingrained very early on, but it is a wave. But I just want to track back to saying it's a particle and a wave. So fascia exists molecularly. It's the collagen fibers that give us stability, that weave our shape together and hold us. Fascia also includes bones, so it's the strength of our bones as well. And fascia has this quantum side. It's plasma. So we're both and we are constantly spinning ourselves into either adapting to a shift by being more fluid or creating a sense of groundedness and stability in ourselves so that we can show up.
So is just so I have my feet on the ground here, this is the same fascia that I learned about in becoming a massage therapist that I work with myofascial release. We're talking about this same matter, correct?
Yes.
The same fascia that for people that don't know, right? Fascia, it wraps every single cell in our body. It's like a saran wrap around every cell, and then groups of cells are then wrapped in fascia together, like muscle cells, right, are grouped together. And then the fascia is wrapped around that, but then it also wraps into the tendon to the bone. So my big toe way down here is connected to the crown of my head with fascia. So when you say it's moving and it's fluid, it's not just like when we think about it's here, it is everywhere. It's within every cell of our being, of our physical body. I just want
Yeah.
people to understand that it's not just like one thing. You can't do anything without it.
The Matrix.
Yeah, literally.
Elizabeth, when someone finds their way to you, can you share with our viewers some of the multitude of you know, issues that they would like support with, or that they're drawn to you for help with? Because you're a somatic therapist, you're a movement therapist and specialist, you're a world-class healer. You have so many modalities, in your etheric tool belt, as we would say, to pull out, and just what do you notice that people are drawn to? And tell us how you enjoy supporting people.
Well, one of the things that I do when I work one-on-one with people is that I zero in on what their need is. So in some cases, someone, for instance, maybe they've suffered from a traumatic brain injury, and I help them to be able to find their strength and their stability and develop their proprioception and walk, gait. I spend a lot of time on gait, but the perspective that I come in with when I'm working with anybody on the physical dimension, as well as a more emotional dimension, and I'll get into some of the reasons people come to me for that support in a moment, but is that when you understand that fascia is a biotensegral matrix. You'd mentioned the word matrix before. And if you think of Buckminster Fuller and his tensegrity model, think of this as a living tensegrity. So I am looking at where is the balance of tension and compression in this form. And the balance of tension and compression, as Dan was pointing out, is not just, you can see a difference in somebody could be hiking up the left hip, for instance, and you can work with that. But what you realize is that everything is exhibiting an imbalance throughout the body as well. So you could work on the right foot and shift the left hip. You know this from the body work that you do. So that's one area that I work on. And just to drive a little bit deeper into more precision around that, if you work around the joint capsules, you are activating the mechanoreceptors in the joint, and this is how bones locate you in space. So a lot of times our proprioception, for whatever reason, has gotten a little bit cloudy, muted. There's lots of different reasons for different people. So you can start to develop that by working the joints. And another way that you can make somebody feel more stable is by doing exercises that build the fascia sites, that lay down new collagen fibers so that they actually can create a form that gets them stronger.
So I think I need Elizabeth every day, Dan.
My shoulder here doesn't do what it used to, right? So I imagine we get those limitations either from habituated patterns or from an injury.
Yes.
And we have to do like some neuromuscular re-education so that our brain knows it's okay to move in this pattern where maybe we were injured, whether it was due to a fall or a trauma in a situation we had. But then, so you're working with that to tell the body it's okay to move in this way that we used to. And that's in this more flow state.
Yes. You have a natural movement pattern built in anyway, even if you're born with a birth defect. You know, you're a human being and you have that template somewhere in your knowledge base of embodiment. But the interesting thing is, I don't take somebody through just like a rotation of the shoulder. I mean, I will do that, but what I am really encouraging people to do is to develop a relationship with the movement. So they start to move and they go very slowly and they notice that something is sticking. And so maybe they will back off or make a sound or start to wave a little bit, or maybe then they can reach out a little bit and know that they're not rotating their spine, but they're really just working on isolating in the joint capsule. There's something about fascia that we have to remember. We're working with probabilities. We don't know that. I can't tell you to do something in a certain way and have it work. When we're working with probabilities, there's this wonderful word that I learned recently, stochastic. Stochastic nature of fascia simply means that it's fractal and it's unpredictable. I can show you probable ways that you will be able to open up movement and sensory awareness in a certain area of the body, but you're your own teacher. And so what I'm encouraging is to develop this relationship with your body.
Mm.
And that relationship, if I may just jump to the emotional piece and answer the second part of your question, Joy. So I have people who will come to me because they feel like they're scared to death of what's happening in the world. Maybe their children are vulnerable for one reason or another. Maybe they feel overwhelmed, like they're wasting their opportunity to do whatever they can to make change happen. And there's so many forces impacting us right now. So a lot of what I do when someone comes to me like that is, first of all, I'll look at the patterns in their body. If they're a hypermobile person, I happen to be a hypermobile person, you tend to have anxiety. You tend to flare your ribs, breathe high with it, and never really relax your diaphragm.
Mhm.
And you don't know how to get your breath low and utilize the ground reaction force of the earth to help lift you. In this process, you're waking up a whole network of diaphragms throughout the body that allow you to live in more ease. And as you're living in more ease, you're feeling a greater sense of support, creativity, possibility, new solutions, innovations, things like that start to pop up for you. And I think it's really learning how to believe that we have within us a lot more connection to the way that nature creates life than we ever realized. And we can use that to create more well-being for ourselves.
You know, when you speak, I feel you transmitting, like being anchored, not just to the body, but the earth. And I feel like my breath can come down a little bit more. Like I can ease. So you seem to be transmitter as well, Elizabeth, because we know that the physical level, the body is actually much slower, like the heartbeat of the mother, heartbeat of the earth. And we tend to run really fast, especially in New York, as New Yorkers, especially in the world as it is now. And just listening to you talk, like I could feel that slower rhythm and almost like an invitation to become more embodied in the present. I can imagine that brings immense healing to people for all for the many reasons one could become anxious, And after leaving a session from you, I'm wondering if you often hear such things, or if you could share with us some of the feedback that you've heard. And I have a great story to tell our viewers and listeners about my time with Elizabeth once.
I was thinking about that time earlier today. So, one of the greatest things someone ever said to me was how much she trusted me, that I was able to guide her into spaces that she had not been able to access on her own before, which really opened up for her a deeper sense of compassion and also capacity. You have to have more capacity to deal with the world today. And so we can do practices, we can learn how to guide ourselves into doing practices that don't seem like very much. I'm just going to do a quick bridge, if I may, to Dr. Dan. One of the things that he said, which I loved, is he said a couple things I loved, but one of the things that he said was that the little things add up. That don't feel overwhelmed. And I go back to what Dan was saying about how everything is connected. You don't have to think, oh my God, I've got to do like my whole body, and then I've got to do fascial hopping to get the elasticity. But no, you can do one small thing. And Bucky Fuller, Mr. Tensegrity, one of my heroes, has on his tombstone, call me trim tab. A trim tab is a little cut in the rudder of a big ship, so that when they are changing course, they don't just turn the rudder, they tick one of the little cuts, and it kind of adjusts. And they do it again, and then they do it again, because your fascia, your body is an aqueous substance working with that medium. And so each little thing that you do, the little small things, think of it like a trim tab.
It's amazing. Thanks for referencing to that too. Folks, you want to go back and really check out Dr. Daniel Yadigar, our first episode of Energy D podcast this year. And of course, Elizabeth is segueing in. I almost feel like you're starting to open the flow here in such a wondrous way. Where did it all begin? 40 years in the field, plus you were a dancer, owned your own studio in New York City. And where did it all begin? This passion to listen to the body and to create spaciousness therein.
Began in a loft on Center Street in Soho with my mentor, Calvin Holt, who owned Serendipity Restaurant. That was his cover, but he was really a wizard. And we would get together in his loft, a bunch of dancers and actors, and he'd put on music and put tape on the floor and build up a resonance, and then you'd rip the tape up and people would go flying. You'd release the energy and it would fly through your body. It opened my eyes in a way to riding the wave like I've never experienced before. And also in that loft, we did this open-eyed meditation. And he was a disciple of Rudrananda, who was a disciple of Muktananda. And we would do open-eyed meditation, and you'd take turns. That was what he innovated. You'd take turns sitting in the front, and you'd look at each person in the eye, and you would just be open, and time would open up. Space would open up. You would see souls. You would realize that time and space are not the way that we think of them. Time is diaphanous. Space is, if you can access the dimensions of space, you realize that you're boundless in a certain way. And of course, that gets uncomfortable. And so we need to come back into ourselves. We need to build up the strength and the resonance like we did with the tape then and we do now with this elastic web of ours that pulsates to our signature rhythm.
Calling people back home to themselves. Elizabeth Dare Andes. Wow. Thank you for that. I feel your passion for embodiment and really having a relationship with selves and self and releasing the energies that create that wave and that I can imagine just more ability to move freely through one's life. And I got to share a story. This is great. So I'm in New York City, Dan, and I discovered that Elizabeth is on the Upper West Side. I'm gonna see Elizabeth, and she was supporting me, and it was just such a wonderful thing. And I'm going to ask you how you found your way to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing in a moment. But this was what was so wonderful about working with you, Elizabeth. So I was sharing with Elizabeth, who had asked about, my presenting complaint, which was lower lumbar curvature of the spine at the base. And Elizabeth asks me to turn around so she can do the postural assessment. So look, that you're torqued. And you asked me if I would want to know what the perfect alignment would feel like and then check in with my pain levels if I was willing to do that, something of that nature. Sure, you had me sit on the floor. You got a yoga block, which you placed at the base of my spine. Then you had like a wrap, some sort of you place that around yourself and around me, and you, movement expert, you're on the floor, you've got your feet at the block, and you're gently pulling and asking me if it's okay, every micro movement. And I felt, Dan, literally her stack my spine to optimal alignment, like an energetic chiropractor dancer on the floor in slow motion, beautiful, using your own body and rhythm. And then you asked me to breathe and tell you how that was. And I remember sharing with you, oh my goodness, I can get a deeper breath. This is the way that I'm supposed to be standing. Yeah. And then you invited me to move to the massage table and to do some healing and to make space within the vertebrae, right? And the energy to moving again from the place so that I would have the memory of what it felt like to be in the perfect postural alignment. And the pain was completely gone. But wait, folks, there was more. Then you brought me to the table and did a beautiful healing to try and free and clear from where I was used to holding as opposed to where I was naturally meant to hold, which was what created the pain-free status.
For sharing that, I'm really touched.
Beautiful. One-stop shop, ladies and gentlemen. Elizabeth Dare Andes, dancer, somatic therapist, healer. In this amazing loft experience that you described, I'm wondering how soon thereafter were you led into the field of energy medicine, energy work, energy healing?
So at that time, I was teaching at the 92nd Street Y. I was in charge of their fitness program, the classes. And I had a student who I still, well, you know her, Francine James.
The divine.
She hadn't come to the school yet, but she had Barbara's book. And I saw the book in the locker room. I said, "What is this book?" "I'm taking it. I'm borrowing it." I took it home and I started to highlight everything in yellow. And I realized I can't give this back to Francine. And I get to the last page and there's a picture of Barbara there. And I stopped cold in my tracks because it was the face of this. I'm getting chills telling you about it. I'd had a dream about Barbara, like months before that. I'd never seen her picture. We were in a forest in the mountains and it was covered in snow. And there were it was school. It was a grove of pine trees and there were these stumps and we were all sitting on the stumps and she was teaching us and she had blood dripping out of her ear. And so after she finished the lesson, I went up to her. I said, "My God, there's blood coming out. What can I help you?" And she said, "This is the mark of the wounded healer." And now, so that at that moment, I said, "I'm going to this school." That's how I got into the school. She had an HMD in Manhattan somewhere, and it was sold out. And then
her lectures in New York went like that.
Yeah, and then I did the weekend and that was it. I was in. Fast forward, the time comes when we move up here from the city, and I get the studio in Phoenicia, and I've had it for 3 years or something, and I discovered that Barbara's ex-husband, who used to run the admin for the center where Barbara was, had that space. And I started realizing Barbara was there all the time. So she's still with me, so present. So she is informing me all the time. I feel that. I'm sure you do.
It's so nice that you say that, Elizabeth. We often feel her even more present now, you know. We just do an alignment and she's there. She's so happy, and it's really lovely that you know, we have schools all over the world, which, as you know, was her longing. That was her longing, you know. So we feel such a responsibility to caring for that longing, that expansion, and you know, you're such a big part of that. And here we're about to go into school, and it's Creative Arts Week, which of course you developed, and people create an artistic expression or a performance of their healing journey for the year. And it's a great way to start expressing oneself through movement, through sound, through people, you know, reopening to their art that they may have put down a long time ago. And what could be deeper? I remember when you came to the school and we're like, oh my gosh, you were so agog, like realizing this was still in place after decades. So thank you for what you've created and how many people you've impacted as an educator,
Thank
as a
you.
healer, as a somatic therapist, dancer. Dan, do you have another question for Elizabeth before we?
I'm really taking this all in. I love hearing the lineage of stories and how we're led to these places with breadcrumbs that we don't know at the time are breadcrumbs that bring us there. I was just curious in your scope of work, and Joy described her one of her sessions with you. Do you find people are really surprised that the work you do with these smaller movements and the profound impact that it has? Are they surprised that it's something as simple as small movements, and not kind of like we were talking about earlier, it's the small continuous things every day, the right decision to eat the right thing.
Mhm.
Are people often surprised that it's really just these small things that unlock the joints or their healing or their breath, and it is really in their power to do that? I was just curious if you get that feedback that people, like I said, are surprised, and then also in a good way surprised that they have the power to make those changes.
On a good day.
I know.
The thing is, when you do these things, you can have a profound experience. The question is, does it stick? To use a not a good fascia word. um, because the changes that really advance someone's well-being can be gradual. And so they might do a session with me or 6 weeks with me or something, and then they're saying a little bit later, "My God, I bounded up the stairs like I was 16 years old. I haven't felt that level of anxiety. I'm happier in my life." So those kinds of changes are the ones that I
Mhm.
really want people to incorporate into their lives. And when they do that, do they know that it's these small steps? Is it those small steps? Is it the small steps interacting with it shifted the way they relate to their husband or their children? And so their environment supports them more. This is where I personally have to detach from whatever outcome it is, because that stochastic nature, all we're working with, Dan, is probabilities. How someone takes those probabilities and makes them into their possible new reality is
Mhm.
such an individual thing. Sometimes we hope that they realize that they have the agency to make that change happen.
Beautiful, Elizabeth. You know, it goes back to what Barber twins, so many of the greats teach, which is wool healing. is self-healing, ultimately. It's like, I love that surrendering to the choices that one makes, and that healing can be so subtle. It could be perhaps 6 months later. It's like, oh, look at that. I just bounded up the stairs. I've got a greater range of motion. And I'm 4 months in just noticing that, and lasting change sounds like a real passion for you. Now, we have a special treat for our viewers and listeners. We're going to present them with a lovely video of you with an experiential for people to get a little idea about what you do and help to make a big change for themselves if that is what they so choose. Before we get to that, just want to ask you, you've got a couple of things coming up. What are you excited about for this year? Did you want to share that and where people can find your work?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Well, let me just mention that I do have a new website. Right now, I have two websites. I believe that the links are going to be there,
Yes.
but it's going to list my various offerings. But one of the things that I'm going to be doing, and I'm very excited about, is that I just want to teach a fascial fitness class on my Substack. I write posts and notes and all of that stuff. And I've decided I wanted to start teaching just little segments that people can do. They can tune in and we can spend 10 minutes on this, 10 minutes on that. How do I create more fluidity? How do I build more proprioception in my shoulder joint? We can focus on
Hmm.
little things like that so that people can incorporate that sort of work into what they do. And then, in addition to that, I have my one-on-one work, which I love doing with people. I'll continue that and start a group again. I have a group called Thrive. This will be
Hmm.
the cohort of Thrive. And Thrive is designed for people who have or who are interested in a little bit more of the context of what is fascia science and how does it differ from the how does biotensegrity differ from biomechanics? So how would I change the way I teach yoga or the way I work out? How would I incorporate some of these things in to build this kind of fascial
Hmm.
strength? So we work together in a group. People get to experience their own body changes, but they also get kind of the professional underpinning of the theory and the context. And that's provided through lectures and videos and articles and research papers that I kind of distill down so people don't have to go out and read 100 research papers.
The best, Elizabeth.
I appreciate that.
And then kind of tacked on to that is that I running concurrently with that for people who really want a professional mentorship. We have a mentoring program.
And you're right, your studio is in Phoenicia still.
Yes, I have
Oh,
a studio in Phoenicia, New York, Embodied Soul Studio, and I teach virtually. And once the snow melts, I'll be doing some in-person classes, and I always see people privately there as
oh
well.
man,
That's so
you're
exciting. I can imagine so many yoga teachers and movement experts and healers are drawn to you. You're a great mentor,
Thank you.
teaching the next generation to help the next generation, the next generation, and ooh, one little movement at a time adds up, brings us back to the whole. Now, we're going to encourage our folks to get comfortable for your experiential. Dan and I want to thank you ever so much for delighting us and really spending time with us to feel the embodiment that you offer and the various teachings. And you're a master educator and healer. Thank you. And soul. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being on Energy D podcast. Why don't you tell our viewers and listeners what you would suggest that they bring for? We're going to end our show with a mighty experiential from the incredible Elizabeth Dare Andes.
Well, we're going to work on the wave how the wave moves through the body. So in order to do that, what I want you to do is, number one, get into a comfortable position for your body. For some people, it's a yoga mat and a block and a child's pose, and then you get like a bolster to lay across your thighs, because when you go into child's pose, you want the bolster against the front of the rib cage. Very important, if you're doing that variation, that you have enough pillows or blocks so that your pelvis is actually supported. It's not, your butt is not in the air. And if that isn't comfortable for you, then you can simply sit in a chair and put the bolster on your thighs and lean forward. You might need another pillow or something for your head, but figure it out. Play this. You can stop the thing and get another pillow if you need it, because it's very important that when we do this, you're in the parasympathetic rest state. You're not tensing, or we can't change the tissue. So that's the first thing we do. It lets things, there's this term in fascia called crimping. So it lets the kind of knotted release.
Do that again, please.
We all know that
Well, I'll
feeling.
do it.
Now, Dan, you're going to love this. Dan loves movement and dance. I just want to put that out.
My favorite. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, though. I'm going to do it for sure.
You have to tell me, like, you have to get back to me and say, that didn't work for me, or, oh, that was wonderful. I want to know.
Listen, you're not far from here. I'll come down and we'll chat about it. I'll come down.
We want to thank you so much for being with us today, and also sharing your mighty wisdom and what you offer with our viewers and listeners, and how they can have optimal health. And it doesn't have to be this big, woohoo, Baryshnikov jumps in the air, right? And you're going to teach them all about that. So folks, tune in. Put this on hold, get your bolster, get your pillow, get your comfort items, because you're about to be trained by the master. We want to thank you, Elizabeth Thayer Andes, for being on Energy D podcast today.
It was my supreme pleasure. Thank you both so very much. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Well, hello. I'm glad you could join me for this experiential in your fascia. It's your body's largest communication network. It's the most sensory organ that we have in our bodies, more sensitive than the iris of your eye. And fascia, when it gets injured, adhered, gummed up, it loses some of that ability to be a communicator, actually a superconductor that communicates much faster than neurons can communicate in your body. Fascia can communicate at almost the speed of light. It's a truly phenomenal thing. One of the problems that I see all the time with people is that they're stuck back here, that they're in a chronic state of anxiety, the back is arched, there's tension in the superficial back line, that's a fascial sheath in the back of the body. And when that happens, the breath is labored. It's not as full as it can be. We use a lot more effort to breathe and just get through life. And what I see works with people a lot in helping them make a shift is to be able to get the diaphragm rooted toward the back of your ribs. That lets the diaphragm not only release on the inhale, but it helps it to expand and it blossoms. And the diaphragm can really open and float down as the breath comes into the lungs. And operating just beneath that, I should do this, is your pelvic diaphragm. So you're inhaling and the respiratory diaphragm comes down, and then the pelvic diaphragm comes down, and then you exhale and the pelvic diaphragm comes up, ideally, of course, and the respiratory diaphragm that has this pressure, this hydraulic pressure. It's not muscle, it's not effort.
It's this hydraulic pressure that lifts you. And there's a great sense of ease and well-being with this. So we're going to play a little bit with this today. We're going to do a couple of different experiences to really feel the sense that there's a web of fascia that condenses and expands to hold us. So we're going to start off with this 3D breath. This is what I want you to do. I'm going to move back. I'm sitting on a block. You can do this on a block or on a chair. So sitting up nice and straight with, if you're in a chair, your feet are on the floor, otherwise your knees are folded. And you want to know that the big bony parts of you, the skull, the rib basket, the bowl of the pelvis are lined up like a syzygy. You know, there's a sense of them being in a vertical relationship with each other, but there's space in between them. And you're going to take a nice deep breath in through the nose. And you're going to start exhaling through the mouth, making your exhale a little bit longer. We have to first get into the parasympathetic system if we're going to do fascial work. We can't do it when we're activated. So just some easy nasal breaths, exhaling through the mouth. And you can make a gentle shh sound to yourself, like you're hushing a little baby. And then try to make your inhales with the tongue, the roof of the top of the tongue placed on the roof of the mouth, the tip of the tongue forward toward the teeth. And you're inhaling up and out the crown. And you're exhaling, making that exhale longer. And whenever you want, you inhale. And then start thinking that you're inhaling from the bottom up, like you had giant underpants that were ballooning up. And you inhale all the way up and out the crown. And we're really focused on 3D breathing here. So this is the vertical dimension. You're getting nice and tall. And when you exhale, careful not to collapse. Keep all those big bony parts hovering. And then make your exhale a little bit stronger. So you add like a CH before the sh sound. And make a sound that it helps you to associate an action of condensing without collapsing. So it's like you have this gentle girdle, this cat suit that's giving you a little internal support. Pause before you inhale and see if you can really feel when all the breath is out, your body's squeezing itself. You're hugging yourself. It's not about muscles. And then inhale and fill up top to bottom. And then I want you to start to fill up side to side. So get wide. Breathe out through the ribs. You can place your hands here on the ribs and breathe into them and get really wide. All this tissue between the ribs is so tight sometimes in us. You know, we hold so much tension there, and there's so much expansion that's available. And then finally, you're breathing forward and back, but place a hand on the ribs and a hand on the back and breathe into the back body more than the front. Really fill those back ribs into the back hand and exhale. Holding the breath out and then inhaling, filling up from the bottom, 3 dimensions at once, up and down, side to side, forward and back, but really back. And start to notice, where are my habits? When I exhale, do I pop my head forward? Do I tuck my tailbone under? Do I collapse my chest? Or do I splay out like that? Many different variations. So now we're going to go into a spinal articulation and a child's pose. So you're going to need some props. I'm sitting on a yoga block, so if you're going to do child's pose, then you'll need a block and you'll need a large bolster that you can lay across your thighs that comes to just, to about right under your bra line, so that when we lean forward in child's pose, you have a nice sense of being able to keep the floating ribs. If you feel around here, feel for the tips of your ribs, those floating ribs, and then put your hands on your hip bones and imagine that you have two straps, one on this side, one on this side, that are keeping your ribs from flaring, keeping your back from arching. And should you go into a collapse there, you can feel the kind of loosening of those straps. Okay, but what we're really trying not to do is flare the ribs forward. The bolster's a nice reminder of that. When you go into child's pose, you may need a pillow for under your head or something. Now, the good news is if you don't like going into child's pose, you can sit in a chair and do this just as easily. Just get a bolster, just lean forward. But in the meantime, here's what we're going to do before that. You're going to place your hands on your thighs towards your knees and sit up nice and straight. And I just want you to practice a nice deep breath, full 3D breath in, nice and easy. And then when you exhale, think that this whole core, not the muscles only, not the core star, not the dantian only, but just this radiant nuclear core of your being, irradiates, lights up, heats up, and you're going to start to pull your navel toward your spine. And as you do that, you start to think about articulating one vertebrae at a time: tailbone, sacrum, lumbar spine, thoracic spine. See if you close your eyes and get a sense of moving each vertebrae one by one. I'm going all the way up to the base of my neck. I'm in my cervical spine, 7 vertebrae there. My chin now goes forward to the notch between my collarbones. Then I take a deep, easy, full breath in, and from the tailbone all the way up the spine, one vertebrae at a time, I'm going to bring those vertebrae forward. Now I'm still radiating, but I'm not pulling the navel in so tightly, but those straps are keeping me in a proper positioning so my diaphragm doesn't flare. And then I'm going to the sternum, and then I'm going to the cervical spine, and I'm reaching forward. And I inhale, and I come all the way back, and I start again from the bottom up. Tailbone, sacrum, lumbar spine. Reach it back. See if you can get a sense of differentiating each vertebrae. Thoracic spine. Find the tight spots. If you find a tight spot, you can pause and maybe you do a little pulling the navel in, wavy movement, nice and easy. And then all the way into that chin between the collarbones. And then one last time, you're going to take the tailbone and reach it out and away from you and begin to let your body come forward into a nice extension, just noticing one vertebrae at a time. Maybe you get up to between the shoulder blades and it's a little tight and you want to give it a little wavy action. Sternum reaches forward. Throat opens. Neck is released. Head comes down, chin to the sternum. Pulling the navel to the spine. You're going to go back vertebrae by vertebrae. Reach those vertebrae back. And now, once you're all the way there, we're just going to unwind to straight. So deep breath in. And one vertebrae at a time comes up and up and up until you're floating head above the rib basket above the pelvic bowl. And nice and strong, a gentle squeezing at the end of your exhale. Pause before the inhale and see if you can feel that gentle internal hug. That's your fascial web. All right, so now we're going to go into the child's pose, and you're going to bring your bolster in place, and you're going to lean all the way forward and put your head down. Now, if you're on a block and your butt is up in the air and your lower back is in a position where it's not, the buttocks aren't supported, the lower back can't let go. So if that's you, a lot of people have tight hips and they can't get all the way over in a child's pose. Get another pillow or a bolster and put it over the block so you are lifted up a little bit higher. Or as I said before, you can go back to the chair. And then you're going to get everything in place, make sure you're nice and comfortable, and lean forward. And so you're leaning forward, your head is going down onto a pillow, you're leaning over nice and supported, at which point you just start to breathe one more time. Inhale, nice, deep, full breath, in and out through the nose, filling up from the base. And as you exhale, give me that shh, but you're going to modulate it. It's going to be just barely there at all. It's like shh. This soothing, shushing sound to get you to start to activate that radiant core. When we're doing the fascial work, the radiant core is always turned on. It's always alive. It's moving. It is part of that whole hydraulic system of breath. So now you're going to inhale, and I want you to think that you're inhaling from the base of your underpants, and you're filling up the buttocks, and you're inhaling and filling up the back body. And can you sense the vertebrae rising up just a little bit? Because you freed them up like free floating pieces of seaweed or something on the ocean surface. They're floating, and the tissue of the low back is opening and widening and softening. And you're inhaling all the way up to the crown. And then as you exhale, it's just a gentle belly button gently pulls back to the spine. And perhaps you can feel not only the lift of the vertebrae here, vertebrae are floating easily, but you're also beginning to sense the pelvic floor breathing. And as the pelvic floor breathes, there's a sensation of movement in the pelvic floor, a lifting sensation as you exhale. And I want you to start playing with that very gently. And once you start to get that, begin to reach your rib cage up toward the ceiling with the vertebrae so that you're letting the back of the diaphragm root into the back of the ribs. So there's a slight pulling in at the navel, and the ribs start to lift up, and the belly hollows as the pelvic floor lifts and supports that extra action of opening in the back of your rib cage. Opening and expanding the diaphragm, rooting it to the back of the ribs so that it can blossom. And on the inhale, can you feel that blossoming? That from the back, we open, we widen. The pelvic floor descends as it begins to get the impulse from the upper diaphragm. And then as you exhale, pelvic floor lifts. You're pulling back and up, and the exhale becomes a wave that is ground reaction force, that is effortless action. So we don't have to work so hard. We don't have to hold tension and think that I'm going to muster through all of this. No, there's ease and support available in our bodies. Now, when you're ready, I want you to slowly sit up. And I want you to find that straight way of sitting that feels like you're floating. Skull floats above the rib basket. Rib basket floats above the pelvis. And just feel the sensation. You don't have to name it. You just feel it. Don't even try to find a word. Just open to the sensorium that's available to you here. And see if now you can very gently go back and find that floating breath. You inhale, the underpants fill up from the bottom. All the way up to the top. You exhale. Pull the belly button in. You aim that area of the diaphragm to the back of the ribs, but you don't collapse. You sit up nice and straight. No compression. And now you just shift over into quiet breathing. Inhale, we're going to focus on the diaphragm widening and lowering, and the pelvic diaphragm following that. And exhale, focus on the pelvic diaphragm, lifting, almost like you're trying to stop the flow of urine. Or if you're a man, a little squeeze of the testicles. Just a little lift, no excess, just the hint of it, lifting you up so you get the activation of the pelvic floor. And if you can find that, keep exhaling, keep exhaling, keep exhaling, keep exhaling, all the way out and up and out the crown. And let yourself experience the ease of being breathed. Thank you. Till next time.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Joy and I really appreciate it. Hey, if you're liking our content here, please make sure you like, follow, subscribe on your favorite platform to make sure you, stay up to date with all the latest and greatest we put out here at Energy Diagnostics Podcast.
That's right, Dan. And if you're liking our content, folks, please feel free to share so others may enjoy the benefit of the wisdom our guests are offering.
Thanks so much and be kind to each other out there.